When should you look up words doing comprehensible input? I don't believe this question has one straight answer, but I do believe I can offer you the guiding principles to help you answer this question for yourself, while ensuring you become fluent on your comprehensible input journey, just like I did. What is going on, guys? My name's Nick. I'm the creator of Lengualytics and a fluent speaker of the Spanish language, as previously mentioned. The reason the answer to this question isn't simply look up every single word from now until forever is because comprehensible input is about understanding messages. It's not about deliberate memorization or conscious study of a language. And the issue with excessive translation is that it can interrupt that process. It turns input into a decoding puzzle as opposed to just a stream of meaning you follow along with. The secret to understanding a language spoken at normal pace is not memorize the most direct translations. Instead, it's deeply and automatically understand what people are trying to say. However, the idea that simply knowing direct translations while you listen to comprehensible input has some kind of severe impact on your learning, I disagree with. And I can say that with some confidence because I did all of the things that Dreaming Spanish and the ALG method tell you shouldn't do. I used direct translations, I used English subtitles, I used Spanish subtitles, and I still turned out perfectly fluent. That's important to understand as this video goes forward because I'm explicitly saying that direct translations in themselves are not bad. It's how you apply them in the long term that can be problematic. So when does looking up words actually become a problem? In my opinion, it only becomes a problem when it gets in the way of the one skill that actually decides whether you become fluent or whether you fail. And that skill is tolerance for ambiguity. Tolerance for ambiguity is the #1 skill someone who wants to learn another language can build. It's the ability to listen to a language, not understand every word, and be okay with that. People who have no experience with comprehensible input are naturally pretty bad at this. And the only way to build this skill is to listen to your target language and allow a level of uncertainty. You cannot understand a language spoken at native speeds if you do not have this skill. It will be impossible. The only dangerous lookup, the only time when you look up a word that actually hurts you is when you're doing it to escape the discomfort of not understanding 100%. But translations for other reasons like genuine curiosity should not be treated the same. They should be treated completely differently. If we accept this framework, then 3 questions arise. How will we learn words if we never look them up? What's the actual cost if we do lookups just to escape discomfort? How do we identify which type of lookup we're doing? Sometimes we can start to believe that the lookup is when the learning happens. We tend to throw out everything else. The associations we're making between words, the exposure to words in authentic context. That doesn't always feel like learning. It feels like if we don't focus on something, it was just background noise. But this confuses the moment you become aware of learning with the moment the learning actually happens. We have to accept the fact in language learning that a lot of the times we don't know what we know. The reality is you don't have to feel like you've retained something to retain something. Language learning is not a rational exercise like math or history. In math, you're consciously aware of every rule you know, and you consciously decide which rule to use to solve every problem. In history, it's the same thing. You either know or you don't know a historical fact. Because languages are so gigantic and complex to the point that we actually don't really know all of the aspects that go into them, language learning becomes a lot more like riding a bike. There's no conscious checklist of rules you've collected for riding a bike, you simply know how to do it. We'd be taking credit away from our brains if we thought that engaging with input we understand is pointless unless we can give it some explicit labels. Just by listening to a language at your level, your brain implicitly takes in a fire hose of information about how that language works. You won't see the knowledge base you're building like you see a memorized list of facts. You'll see it leak out in your ability to follow conversations, your ability to catch nuances, your ability to acquire new words faster after fewer exposures. The acceleration is proof that the implicit work is happening. But the issue is you only get that proof if you stick with the system long enough for the gains to become obvious. To be clear about something first, wanting to escape discomfort is completely natural. No adult can simply rewrite their brains to go from the 100% certainty we have when we're listening to our native language to the abject ambiguity that comes from listening to a foreign language overnight. Most kids need training wheels before they can ride a bike. Most input-based learners require translations before they can sit comfortably not understanding everything. There's no shame in that. But the difference between people who reach fluency and people who get stuck in the beginner intermediate stage forever is that the fluent people recognized the cost of keeping the training wheels on. The cost of keeping training wheels on is you never actually learn how to balance. Or in the case of language learning, you never actually learn how to understand a language in a natural and automatic way. Riding a bike with training wheels is not actually riding a bike. Directly translating and doing grammar calculations on every sentence you hear is not actually understanding a language. After 1,000 hours of experience listening to Spanish, I've definitely grown away from the belief that direct translations used early on will just permanently scar you. Those fears have become more like superstitions to me, and they cause a lot of undue guilt and anxiety that I don't think is necessary. The only real cost of direct translations is the cost of the discomfort you don't sit with. If you don't find yourself naturally weaning off direct translations as you progress, maybe every 50 or 100 hours, that's the real cause for concern. It's not that the translations are hurting you, it's that you're not allowing yourself to be uncomfortable. So don't feel guilty about a translation simply because it's a direct translation. In fact, in my opinion, wanting to look something up, wanting to get a direct translation, can be a positive sign that the input you're watching is compelling. You're watching input and you just want to know what something is. That's totally natural, and it confirms that the input you're watching actually matters to you. The simplest way to tell if you're looking something up out of discomfort is to ask what motivated the lookup. The rule I follow is this: the words I feel a flicker of curiosity about, those are the words I look up. The words I don't look up are the words that just don't capture my attention. The general advice is to only look up words that block you, but I see no problem with just looking up the words that interest you. If you follow this curiosity rule, you'll end up looking up a lot more words than ALG or Dreaming Spanish recommend. You'll know the direct translations for words that Dreaming Spanish says you shouldn't know until at least level 4. And I think that's fine. I think it's totally fine to understand the direct translation for the verb to be in the language you're trying to learn. You just have to understand that direct translations aren't silver bullets. Words you hear over and over in a foreign language that you're not quite sure what they mean are fuzzy, right? But direct translations have a fuzziness problem of their own. Every translation is just a little bit off, some more than others. The word in your native language and the translation in your target language will almost never line up perfectly. Early on, when I started learning Spanish through input, I would do that exercise where I would listen to, a Spanish video with English subtitles, then Spanish subtitles, then no subtitles, and I would do the no subtitles over and over and over again. And after enough rounds, I'd assume, well, I have perfect comprehension. There's nothing left to misunderstand. I've seen all the words in English. I've seen all the subtitles in Spanish. Now I have perfect comprehension. But a year later, when I came back to watch some of those old videos, I realized that there was just so much I was missing. It wasn't like I totally misunderstood, but I was missing all of the nuances that the direct translations erased. So here's the right way to think about direct translations. They give you confidence, not perfection. They give you the confidence to keep watching, the confidence to feel like you're following along, to feel like you're learning before the gains of comprehensible input start to feel obvious. The actual meaning of a word, with all of its connotations and edge cases, is something only input can teach you after hundreds or even thousands of exposures. The translation is a useful label. It sits on top of the meaning your brain is building, but it's not the meaning itself. Meaning lives in a complex network of experience that's built through hearing words in authentic context. The translation is just a sticky note you attach to that concept while the meaning is still being built. And of course, the label can be really helpful. I would never not watch some compelling input simply because because it required me to do a handful of direct translations. Once you have a deep understanding of a concept in your target language, the sticky note isn't doing anything anymore. That's why you'll notice your direct translations fading out of your mind as you accumulate hours. The network of experience was never really using that sticky note, your conscious mind was. And once you have those deep intuitions for words in your target language, then not even your conscious mind really needs that direct translation. To give everyone in the beginner to intermediate phase a bit of comfort, I used a lot of direct translations when I started out. Now, I probably don't remember most of them. In most cases, it's more work for me to think of a direct translation rather than just implicitly understanding the word. That's the result of deep acquisition, and I don't think our brains are too fragile to hang on to direct translations as that process occurs. So when should you look up a word when you're doing comprehensible input? The reason there's no straight answer to this question is because it's a loaded question. It's loaded with fear, anxiety, and guilt from all the different people giving you their opinions on how language learning works. So I'm gonna boil down this video into the 6 insights that I've taken in over 2.5 years of listening to comprehensible input. And with these insights, you can decide for yourself whether or not you should look up a word. Your brain doesn't need direct translations to acquire a language. It's making implicit connections between ideas that don't require your conscious labeling. Direct translations don't inherently hurt your ability to acquire a language, by the same logic of the first insight. Your labels are for your conscious mind. They don't make your brain unable to handle natural acquisition. Direct translations aren't silver bullets. They can give you some clarity, but they're never the full story. Real understanding only happens through experiencing words in authentic contexts. Direct translations can help you understand more difficult content. Input naturally gets more compelling the more difficult it is. You can use direct translations to understand more interesting content. The real cost of direct translations isn't damage to your acquisition. It's the rep you skipped at building tolerance for ambiguity, the skill that actually decides whether you reach fluency or not. Direct translations naturally fade as acquisition catches up. If yours aren't tapering off every 50 hours or so, that's a sign you need to allow yourself to sit with more discomfort. I went from doing tons of direct translations in my first 150 hours to doing very, very few now as an advanced learner. And I want to clear up a misconception. The reason I do fewer translations isn't because I just know every word. When I'm listening to my Harry Potter audiobooks, there's probably 1 or 2 words a sentence that I don't fully understand. At some point, you just begin to realize that trying to nail down every word with some explicit direct translation is just a waste of time. It doesn't actually help you understand native speech. Now, if you're an absolute beginner and you feel like you have to look up almost every single word you see, the insights in this video might feel like they apply to you less. I have a full video of exactly what I did at the absolute beginner stage. I'm gonna put that video on the screen to my left. But if you're more on the beginner intermediate side, I would recommend you watch my video about tolerance for ambiguity because that video can help you understand while you're still struggling to understand faster speech. I'm gonna put that video to my right. Thank you everybody for watching, and a shout out to the person who recommended I do this video. This video is really hard to make. I had to think a lot about it. It seems like an easy question, but I actually made like 4 drafts of this script before I actually went forward. Very hard script to make, but I hope it was helpful. Thank you again.